Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe. And today we have a really inspiring guest who I just adore. Her journey in sobriety is a testament to the miracles that come from working the program. Joining us today is Sonja O, who has been sober since September 5th, 2006. That's 18 years of living the life she once thought was out of reach. Sonja's story is one of faith, transformation, and love. Sonja's the oldest of 5 kids. She met her wonderful husband, Jack O, at her sponsor's house, which is proof this program brings us exactly where we need to be at the right time. Together, they've built a beautiful life surrounded by 3 children and 6 grandchildren. She cherishes time with family and friends and embraces all the incredible gifts of sobriety. So please help me welcome my friend Sonja O to the program. How are you doing today, Sonja?
No, I'm doing great, Joe. How are you, J to the O to E, E, E?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you coming on to share your experience, strength, and hope. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what it was like growing up, Sonja.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Kingsport, Tennessee, and that's where I was during my elementary days. And um, then we moved to Gray, Tennessee, Sulphur Springs, and I, finished up my high school there at Daniel Boone High School, and I probably needed a sponsor at a very young age, like the day I started school. So anyway, I
Yeah.
walked in Miss Deacon's class the first day. She was my first grade teacher. And because, I knew others that had gone to school, I was so excited about being in school. So I go in and
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, and the teacher looked at me and she goes, oh, so you must be Miss Ketron. Would you please take a seat? And I thought, this is not what I thought was going to happen here. I thought everybody was going to say,
Yeah.
yay, she's here. But that's not what
Yeah.
happened. Anyway, and, because I was the oldest daughter, and everything, I was the oldest in the family and there were a lot of kids and stuff. I ended up, just having a lot of responsibilities. I mean, I know when my my youngest sister Denise was born, my mother had gotten pregnant that 5th time, and I was like, oh dear God, please don't let them bring another boy in here, and of course
Yeah.
when they brought Denise in, that's when my mom was like, now you get to babysit and you get to change her diaper. And it was like, oh crap, in the back of my mind
Yeah.
I'm thinking, didn't really think this thing through. But anyway, my sister
Yeah.
has been such a blessing to me. She really, truly has. But I remember, and my friends, when they would come over to play, they wanted to play with my sister. And I thought, you don't understand. I mean, in the background, I'm hearing I'm hearing these old spirituals. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Would you please give me
Yeah.
some playtime? And then they want to play with my sister. You have got to be kidding. So anyway, it all turned out well. And, anyway, I didn't really start drinking until I was in my 30s. So we'll get to that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How big of an age difference is between you and your younger sister?
There was 8 years. 8
Okay.
years. She loves
That
to
was a
tell
lot of
everybody that
responsibility
too.
for young.
Oh, I know, I know. And my
Yeah,
mother was a perfectionist. Now, to have 5 children and put white bedspreads in their bedroom and do not let them play in their room,
yeah,
it was it was chaos because
yeah,
I learned at a very early age, Joe, that if I could run into a room real quick before my mother got in there and I could straighten it up real quick before she came in, everything would be peaceful. And
yeah,
so, that gave me the idea that maybe if I controlled my situations, then
right,
my life would be at peace,
yeah,
and at rest. So, but anyway, I did that a lot. I was very codependent as a kid, trying to keep everybody out of trouble, you know.
right.
So,
So you were kind of like the saving grace for your brothers and
yeah,
sisters to a degree,
yeah,
really.
I know
You
that's
know,
right. Why would they try to? Why would my brothers throw a blanket over me, hog tie me to a pole downstairs while I was on roller skates? We don't know. I think they had some issues with me. Maybe you think?
it sounds like it.
I know that was the shout that was heard around the world. Jeffrey Bryan knew exactly
Yeah,
who had done it. So anyway,
yeah. Wow.
yeah.
So, what was there any alcohol or any drugs or anything like that? In your family, was there anything that?
Not until much later, um, when I was 16, my parents got a divorce. Then, of course,
Okay.
my mother started going out with with her friends, and she would go to bars and stuff, and I would stay home and babysit. Of course, I was always
Yeah.
there to take care of my sister. My brothers, at the time, I had 3 brothers, and at the time they would take off and start drinking. They drank and, did all kinds of things while, you have to remember, my mother was such a perfectionist too. She would come
Mm,
home and she expected everything to be perfect. You had to have the floors needed to be vacuumed. Needed to have all of the dishes done. She left me with the laundry. She left me, I canned during the summer. I mean, it was
yeah.
like she just thought of me as just her main helper, I guess.
Right.
And, but during my high school days, really, I didn't see mom drink around the house. My dad didn't drink around us. Um, and like I said, my brothers, they took off and they would be drinking. And then I would go
Right.
into the codependent mode and try to go find them. So you got to get home before she gets home, because if she gets home and you're not home, I'm in trouble. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, that's pretty much the way that all played out.
It's just thinking like it sounds like you put all this pressure on yourself to make sure
Mhm.
everything was perfect when you got home.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was in chaos, and you were trying to
Right.
put the pieces back together so you didn't get blamed for
Mhm.
the chaos or.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and see, my brother, this is the thing. My brother, he would be like, uh, he had the yard work responsibility, but that was very seasonal,
Okay.
and that was once a week. Okay, so he had the yard work and possibly the garden. He helped with tobacco, and like if they had put the tobacco out, I was inside cooking, so that they would have something to eat
Yeah.
when they took a break and stuff. So, my mother was very hard to deal with. Sometimes she
Yeah.
would come in and she'd say, "Well, do you think we're feeding an army?" I mean, how much food did you fix today? And then I'd tape her
Yeah.
back, and then she would come in and say, well, you didn't fix enough for everybody, and so it was just constantly
Yeah.
living with this. There was a point where, I just said, okay, I'm done. I
Yeah.
tell you, there was this guy I had a crush on. I had crushes. I never had boyfriends. I had crush on. So he gave me a ride home from school one afternoon. And I'm like, I was just so happy my crush gave me a ride home from school, and I
Yeah.
walk in and the house is an absolute disaster. And my mother was already there. Okay. So she literally lit into me. I was nowhere around. It was like, seriously, mom, why? you
Yeah.
know can I not get away for a little while? And so anyway, I did move out, and I lived with my sister-in-law, and her
Okay.
parents were wonderful, so I lived with them for a little while, and then I ended up moving back in. And but I just told her, I said, you expect too much, and you've always
Right.
expected too much, but of course, it really has helped me in life to know how to do all this stuff. And yeah, and as a child, I was especially close to my brother, who was 2 years younger than me. um he's the one who died from alcoholism, and it was really hard, when he passed away.
Yeah.
But he was he was the only one that would play Barbies with me, and it was hilarious because Dad,
Yeah.
you play Barbies with me, and he'd say, "Okay," like, "Oh God, not again." "I'll
Yeah.
be Ken. I'll be Ken." And it was just like,
I'll be
it's
dead.
oh God, just
Yeah.
find something else for me to play. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, he struggled with this disease too. So, but and
So, um, what sounds like, I mean, just outsider looking in, that would, like, you probably had a lot of resentment towards your mom for the way, kind of,
right, yeah,
almost like you were another adult in the house as a child. So,
yeah, yeah,
some degree.
yeah.
Um, what did you do after high school? Was that,
Well, I went to college. I went to ETSU for about 3 semesters, and then I met my husband, my first husband,
okay?
the children's
Okay.
father, and I'd never had a boyfriend or anything like that. It was just all, I thought it was magical. I thought
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
magical. So we got married. We had 3 kids within 5 years. And yeah, I was busy. 2 daughters and then
You
a son. Yeah,
I was busy. Yeah.
I was busy. Yes. But, I still, from my childhood, I thought that if I kept everything done and I was in a good mood and we got along, that
Yeah.
things should work out great, right? I'm doing my
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do whatever, I'm fixing his favorite meals and trying to, just do what I could do to control the situation. So I was
Right.
unprepared for him to have mistresses. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And
I'm s
that's pretty yeah, that was pretty tough to swallow. So
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine that the hurt that caused, you know,
mhm.
And you still weren't drinking at this time, right? This was like you were kind of
No.
swallowing all this.
Well, and, because Randy was really easy to get along with. He was easygoing. I didn't realize if I ticked him off, he went out on me. I mean, that was, yeah,
Right.
it was your lucky day,
Yeah.
Sonia. But I was able to, like, when the kids were little, if we went out to dinner or something, I would have a glass of wine, and it would
Right.
never, it never, it never caused me to go home and say, "Oh, gee whiz, I got to have another one." You know,
Right.
uh, my drinking did start when, when I found out about the affairs. I caught him at a hotel, and he was supposed to be going to night school, and he was at a hotel, and so I had kind of been tipped off earlier. A girl had called for him, and hung up, and then we had a circle drive, and someone came and parked in my driveway, and stupid me thought, well, because I thought, huh, they're probably wanting to rob the house.
Oh,
No, they
jeez.
really wanted my husband. They didn't want my house.
Right.
Well,
Well, maybe
in
they
a
wanted your house
roundabout
and
way,
your
in my
husband. I
house.
don't know.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right. That's right.
Jeez.
So that's when I started. That's when I started to drink, because he had when I confronted him, he said that he had known for a long time that he didn't love me, and that
Mm.
was, that's when I started. I started with wine coolers and made my way up to wine, and that was my favorite.
Right.
So,
Wow. So what was there a point in there where you were like, um, where you it was accelerating and you kind of maybe thought, this might be a problem, or you
right.
know,
Yeah. Of course, I was a little bit of the slow learner type here, you know, 'cause
me
it
too,
was, it
Sonia.
was, it was great. It was great. I'd go through these bottoms and stuff. And well, okay, I'll start when I first started out. I started with wine coolers, and then I would get mixed drinks occasionally, but I never drank at bars. I really didn't, because I never
Yeah.
wanted anybody to see just how much I could really put back, because I
Right.
was like going through a huge bottle of wine every day. If I got one of the box wines, I would make it 2 days. I mean, it was
Right.
just a gigantic amount that I was just like the super sipper person. You go get one of those
Yeah.
big super sipper cups, and put the ice in it and stuff, and then you put the
Yeah.
booze and stuff in it, and just sit there, and you can suck on it all day. I mean, just drink,
Yeah.
drink, drink. So
Yeah.
that's what I did, and I remember when I was still living in Kingsport. I got to tell you this. This is funny, Joe.
Yeah.
Before I get off of here, I got to tell you this now. Honey, it was so funny because I had, I was so afraid that my ex was going to be going through my trash. So I started saving all my wine bottles, and I was putting them in these huge, gigantic appliance boxes. Okay. And I had fragile written on it, and it was downstairs. Downstairs was where I ended up keeping all my booze and stuff. I had a refrigerator down there, so that's where I was keeping my wine bottles, right? Because I didn't want him to have any ammo, because I was going to move. Because, UT had offered
Yeah.
me a position in Knoxville, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to start over. I'm no more. I
Yeah.
am going to go work here, not drink anymore because I don't
Yeah.
want to drink anymore. I mean, I had already at this point had, a real bad heartbreak. I mean, there was somebody that I truly cared for, and I couldn't control my drinking at this point. I'm still in Kingsport. I couldn't control my drinking, and
Right.
anyway, he had he had broken up with me, and he had told me, he said, "Sonia, I can't watch you kill yourself. I
Mm.
can't." And one day I had opened the door, and I had fallen down the stairs because my booze was downstairs. So anyway, I was, kind of banged up and everything. And that's when he told me. And he said, well, he said, I think we need to talk. And I knew he was going to talk about my drinking. And I said,
Yeah.
let's not say we did. That went over like a fart in church. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
because he was out of there. He was like,
Yeah.
I'm done. No more. I mean, I really, he really, I put him through a lot because, I mean,
Yeah.
he would, he tried his best. He probably would have, been a perfect person for Alan on because he was like, you know, drawing lines on the bottle, and I'd water the bottle down, and
Right.
and he would get the weakest wine that he could find, and it was terrible. It was
Yeah.
terrible. But when he left, I cried and cried and cried, but at no point did I say, I think I'll get help.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I thought, okay, this way I'm going to leave everything behind. I'm moving to Knoxville, and I had all my stuff packed, and I get down to Knoxville, and I have the guys, the movers. It was hilarious because they, I noticed they started coming out, and they were like looking at me and going, they were laughing,
Yeah.
you know. So anyway, I get to Knoxville and I start ripping all these boxes open because I got to find these empty wine bottles,
Yeah.
which did not make the trip.
Oh,
So they stayed in my house that I sold. It was funny, really. I mean,
yeah.
I had hundreds of them. So anyway, but the first
Somebody
day,
thought they got a blender, but they actually got
yeah,
your clothes.
yeah, no, really, it's like, wait, she's got fragile written on it, Let's see, what is all of this noise?
Yeah.
And it was like all my empty wine bottles. That was hilarious,
Yeah.
actually. But yeah, I had gotten pretty I was at that lonely jumping off point, or at least you would think I would have been.
Right.
I stayed in that lonely state for quite a while. I
Yeah.
moved to Knoxville and got a job, and had work down here. And the first day that I got to my condo, I start opening the door, and I couldn't get the key to go into the door really good. So I went, screw this. And I went and got something to drink, So there
Yeah.
we go. I
Yeah.
brought it with me.
What was there a low point? You did your geographic, as we call them, right? We call them in
Yeah.
geographics. I'm going to move to
Oh,
Knoxville.
I'm going to
My
move to
life is going
Knoxville.
to change.
That's right. I know, really.
But
I'm going to have pixie
yeah,
dust everywhere. It's going to be great. Right.
yeah. And then
So,
we realized there we are. We're
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and and I often say and that I lost people. There are some people who maybe lose jobs. They lose their marriages or their homes. They lose, they lose money, they go to jail, they get a DUI or whatever. I lost people that I loved. And
Yeah.
and I loved the look that sometimes I would just get because my poor children would be, just look at me like, "Oh God, mom, what?"
Yeah.
You know. Um, and then plus I just had went and visited with my daughter in Salt Lake City, and you know, it's like unpeeling an onion. The longer I'm sober, the more I realize that I did damage. I did damage to my kid.
Yeah.
Um, Amber had stayed up in Kingsport to live with her dad. She was dating her now husband, and she didn't want to move. Well, on the weekends that he would get the other two children that came with me,
Yeah.
instead of reaching out and saying, honey, I want to spend time with you, my baby girl,
Yeah.
I didn't. I drank and I drank and I drank.
Yeah.
And she would call and say, Mom, I want to see you. And she'd come down. And, this came up when I was in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
It came up that she had really missed out on spending time with me. And during that time, my sister also, I isolated so much. I really, truly had started isolating, and it was me and that bottle. And I made sure I had
Yeah.
that bottle at all times. So
Yeah.
there was that point where I was like, I knew the four horsemen so well. You know,
What are the four horsemen,
the
Sonia?
four horsemen are, after you go through the in the big book it says, because we're in that possession of the king alcohol, and then all of the
Yeah.
sudden we know loneliness and it has settled in, and then
Yeah.
we know the four horsemen, which is terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. I even
Mm.
went to a bookstore and got a book. I was going to heal myself. I didn't make it through the
Right.
doctor's opinion before I was drinking again. I didn't even make it, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages in, and I thought, oh, screw this.
Yeah.
And then I would say to myself, okay, now let me say this too, Joe. I didn't go to treatment. I did not go to treatment. Um,
Right.
I called the 800 number several times, and I was always told that you really do not, don't try to quit on your own, because people can have convulsions when they quit alcohol, and that is true.
Yeah.
And they said you need to go to treatment, and I said, you don't understand. I'm here by myself with my children, and I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my friend Margaret, she she was noticing she was noticing these changes, because we had been friends and close friends for a long time. And she started noticing these big changes in my personality. She said, Sonia, she said, I don't know, what to think. She said, for one thing, you know, y- I mean, you don't take care of your parents anymore. You used to always be jolly and happy, and you rarely smile anymore. Um, you just are not happy. And
Yeah.
and it tells us in our big book that we have problems with our personal relationships, and we are just not happy. And I really
Yeah.
wasn't, because I heard it the best way described at a women's convention one time. I heard someone say that it was like having Groundhog's Day every day and gangrene of the soul, because I knew there was a God.
Yeah.
Always knew there was a God. And I knew that God would be able to help me. But I would open that bottle of wine and I would say, God, please help me. But I'm opening the bottle as I'm saying it.
Yeah.
I did not put the plug in the jug. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
So, and
Did,
during that time, I had I went out and I bought a little plaque, and it was a plaque that had this poem that says "Broken Dreams." Have you heard that poem?
No.
As it says, "As children bring their broken toys with tears for us to mend, I brought my broken dreams to God because He was my friend." But then, instead of leaving him in peace to work alone, I hung around and tried to help with ways that were my own. At last, I snatched them back and cried, "How can you be so slow?" He said, "My child, what could I do? You never did let go." And I loved
Mm.
that. And
Yeah.
I would read that all the time. And I kept thinking, how do I let go?
Yeah.
But I finally did get to the point where holding on to alcohol was scarier to me than letting it go. I just didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
My daughter had moved out and she wasn't speaking to me when she graduated high school. And I wasn't there to help her with her prom. And, you know, I can lose dates or I can lose a boyfriend or whatever, but now I can't lose my kids. It was just so incredibly painful. It was so incredibly painful. And it was painful for her too. Because I remember telling her, I would go into a blackout. And she'd say, "Mom, my friend wants me to come over and spend the night." And I'd say, "Okay, go ahead." And then I would drink and drink and drink. And then I'd wake up and I would be like, "Well, she laid out. She laid out." So I would run over to her friend's house and bang, bang, bang on the door. And she would look at me and say, "But Mom, you said I could." And it was like, oh my God, I did. I said you could. It was, it was horrible. It was so bad. That was so painful. And I've heard people say, well, you can't quit for somebody else. And that is true. But I can tell you, Joe, that from my experience, losing that, and what it goes, it tells us that in the book, that our
Yeah.
bottom is the last thing that we lost or the thing that we are about to lose means more to you than alcohol or
Right.
drugs. That then you are at your bottom, and that's a good time to jump off. So my friend Margaret, she got me a list of AA meetings, and she was the one who told me. She said, "Sonia," she said, "your kids are worried. We're all worried. You're drinking too much, and your kids don't know what to do about it." And
Yeah.
so um, I took the AA list of meetings, and then I thought, I'll take them on vacation. I'm not going to AA meetings. Ah, nah, let me try something else. So I all the kids agreed they were going to go on vacation, and even my son-in-law today, he was in that group. We're all going to go. We were going to Fripp Island, right? And I had I stayed, I was at the house and I was packing. Well, I was drinking red wine and white wine. One would not think that that would be a bad combination, but that was awful because
Mm.
I'm telling you, I was laid out. I was like a dead slug. It was bad. So they come
Yeah.
to the door and they're all excited because they're going to go on vacation. And when you're so drunk that you can hear yourself and you sound like, "Mwah, mwah, mwah." That was what it was like. I kept thinking, oh, I hear my kids. I got to get up. I got to get up. And I would get up and I would run into the walls and I'd be staggering, and I would be like, oh my God, I got to stop. I've got to stop. And I sat down. My son-in-law had made pizza and I was like, boy, that's good pizza, Adam. And he go, thank you, Miss Smith. It's DiGiorno. And I'd be like, and a few minutes later, I'd be like, that's good pizza. And he'd go, thank you. It's DiGiorno, and it's like,
This is not a
I
DiGiorno
was like, I
commercial, for the
can't
record.
stop. Yeah, it's like a DiGiorno commercial. It was like, I couldn't think of anything else to say.
Yeah.
And it was, horrible. And then, so when my actual anniversary date, when I actually did stop, was 2 weeks before September the 5th. That was, we went down for Labor Day and, you know, um, came back, and Stephanie and Amber went to Kingsport to live with their dad, and I had my son with me. And I'm all teared up. But getting back to, let me tell you what happened on our vacation. So we walk in, and they said to my son and to everybody, they said, the people who were here last, they left you all some booze. Enjoy yourself, like that. So Tyler goes over and he grabs a bottle and he goes, Mom, look, boop, 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 boop. Like he's gonna have
Yeah.
fun. And I said, no, I'm not gonna have any. I shook it out. I mean, I
Yeah.
shook. Literally. It was, because I wanted to drink, but I was so afraid because I had I was losing my kids. They were growing up, and with my middle child, she wouldn't even speak to me. And that was way too much pain for me. And I know they say you can't quit for somebody else, but the pain that I felt when I lost these people that meant so much to me, you know,
Yeah.
I was,
So when did you go to your first AA meeting?
my first AA meeting was September the 5th. Now, this is what's
Okay.
funny. I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know anything about it. So people were getting these forms signed. And after my first meeting, I went up there. I got my chip, and I went up there and I said, "Where do I get one of those forms?" And they were like, "Oh no, honey, you don't want one of those." But
Yeah.
I was like, I wanted to get credit for being here, And that's when they
Yeah.
told me about the chip and all this. And anyway, that was funny. And then I called Margaret on the way home, and I said, or when I got home, I said, "You gotta keep this white chip. What if somebody gets? What if something happens to me and they find this white chip? I mean, it
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, I'll never be able to. It was like so ridiculous. But And I would
So
love to have
yeah,
that one white chip back, the one that I picked up. I would
yeah.
love to have back. I was able to not,
And
knock on wood, no relapsing. I've not relapsed or anything.
yeah,
Not saying that, shame on anybody that has, but I'm telling you, I don't know how, to be quite honest.
yeah,
I really don't know how, other than when I first came in, there was a lady that was there. She was an older lady, and she said, never, ever let yourself forget what alcohol has done to you. Never.
yeah,
The best thing you can have in this program is a good memory, because the minute you forget, it will look like a viable option again.
yeah.
And
So
so,
what was it like? And you remember what it was like in early recovery?
yeah, yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I had a I had a friend that was in there. It was a friend. We were not boyfriend or girlfriend or anything like that, but he was just a friend. He had relapsed and had came back in. And my sponsor, Linda, at the time, and Nancy, my sponsor, Nancy, at the time, they were like, "Oh, you don't need to be talking to him. He'll get you to relapse with him, right?" So, anyway, there were there were times that I wanted a drink so bad I could just feel my skin crawl. It just
Yeah,
I literally sat on my hands and just rocked back and forth because I wanted a drink so much. And I was told, get on your knees in the morning, pray that God keep you sober. Anytime you start jonesing or something for a drink, you go ahead, make a phone call, get on your knees, and then also thank Him at night. One day I was really, really so, um, I wanted to drink so bad. And, and he called, and I told him, I said, I have just been all day just wanting to drink so bad. And he said, well, why don't you come over to my place and we'll get a bottle? And I said, no, are you kidding? I said, you don't understand. I have lost everyone that means anything to me. I can't do it. I can't,
yeah,
I can't lose anymore. Oh, and fun fact, real fun fact. Took me a while to figure this one out. When you drink like a fish, people smell it on you the next day.
mm.
So, Joe, all those times I thought I had just horrible romantic luck, I just smelled like a brewery and they just didn't want anything with me, right? They just like, oh God, she's a drunk. Even if I wasn't, even if I
Yeah,
wasn't staggering or whatever, it was just, that's a fun fact. It took me a while to figure that one out.
yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, well, oh.
So how did you start to rebuild, like the relationships with your kids and with others that you uh,
Yeah, yeah. I did a lot of praying. I had somebody that said that I needed to keep a God box.
mm,
And anytime I thought about my relationship with Stephanie, I needed to say the serenity prayer, and I needed to put her name on the thing and put it in the God box. I needed to keep a prayer journal so that I could track what was going on. And yeah, it was it was slow at first.
mm-hmm,
But if you do the next right thing and you do the next right thing on a daily basis,
Yeah.
God has a way of just turning everything around. And I don't know how, but you know, um, it was just, I don't know. I really can't take credit for it.
Yeah.
I would call and talk to my daughter, and she was very angry with me for a long time. Sometimes she said nice little 4-letter words. You, mom. And that
Yeah.
was not a lot of fun. But sometimes we also think that things that are bad, when they happen, we think that we don't see the behind the scenes of what God is doing. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
don't. There was a disagreement with, she was living with her grandmother, and there was a disagreement with her first cousin, and her first cousin told a bunch of lies and all this bunch of stuff. And anyway, Stephanie comes and moves in with me, and that was the beginning of us healing, and
Yeah.
we thought it was the most horrible thing that she did all of these horrible twisted things. She was a crazy woman, but yeah, it worked in our favor.
Yeah.
It really did, because she came home, and we were able to work on our relationship, which was so good.
Yeah.
And um and then Tyler, he was really great. And it was so funny because they say to make 90 meetings in 90 days. So he's like the only one living with me, and he's like, "Mom, I bet you got a boyfriend. You got a boyfriend? You got a boyfriend?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "I don't think you're telling me the truth. Do you have a boyfriend?" I'm like, "No, Tyler, I don't." But
Yeah.
anyway, I was going to AA 90 meetings in 90 days. And then also, because I didn't go through treatment, um, I had to eat lots of candy, because
Mm.
I was told that because alcohol has so much sugar in it, that if you don't do that you could go into convulsions. And so I did that for a long time. But yeah, I
You just
wanted
kept
what they
doing it.
had. I just wanted
Yeah.
what they had. I had been so lonely, and I wanted what they had.
Yeah.
And just literally wanted to be happy. I wanted my family back, and I wanted to be happy. And then, of course, everything came together, and now, I mean, I've been there in the rooms when my grandchildren were born. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how wonderful my life is now. And
Yeah.
of course, let's not forget my wonderful husband, who I met over at my sponsor's house.
Yes. And
You know what?
yeah.
I know. You
And
know,
to come clean, Jacko is one of my bestest buddies, and he actually there is a podcast. If you listen to the Jacko episode, you will learn about the other side
yeah, I
of
know.
this amazing marriage.
I know. I tell you what, I told him I'm gonna have to keep him around. He makes me look good, you know,
Yeah,
because
I think you make him
everybody
look pretty
loves
good
him.
too, Sonja. Yeah, I think you make him look pretty good too. So
He's
what are some of
loves.
your what are some of your favorite um, you know, favorite achievements since you've been sober? Like, what are some of the things you're most proud of?
Well, I finally finished school. It took me 30 years, but I'm done. I graduated. It
Yeah.
was so funny too. It was like that Johnny Cash song that says, I did it one piece at a time and it didn't cost me a dime. Well, of course, I worked for UT. And yeah, I was
Yeah.
taking one class or two classes at a time. Sometimes I would have to take off and not go during the semester. My catalogs changed and, so many things. But I finally graduated. And anyway, and of course, my loving husband. It was so funny because there was at one point I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And he goes, Sonia, what will the grandchildren say? And I'm
Oh,
like, oh man, you're killing me, Jack. So anyway, I did finish. I did finish.
the big deal. That's a really
It
big deal.
was.
That was a um, and if I remember right, your name was actually on the rock at the University of Tennessee,
Yeah, it
which is pretty
was. Can
cool.
you believe that?
Yeah, that's a pretty big
Even the
deal.
chancellor
So
did a shout out on that one because it was like
I know that's a
non-traditional student. I know, really.
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you handle stress now and when things get bad? How do you handle that now?
Well, I do a lot of prayer journaling. Like, if yeah, and still use prayer boxes.
Yeah,
Um, like with resentments and things, fourth step is really good. I like to do the 10th step too.
yeah,
And one of my first sponsors told me something that was very valuable. She said, Sonia, it's not always about you. You have got to let people own their own bad behavior. You can't. He, lo- I tell you what, Joe, there is a song that I dearly love. And every time I hear it, I think that was him. It's by CC Winan and it's called Your Goodness is Running After Me because I walked away from God. I
mm,
did. I put alcohol before God. And when I came back in, when I came back to God, I really at first, when they were like, and then we're going to pray, to God. And I'm like, God won't hear me. He won't hear me
yeah,
because some of the things I've done. And, and I put alcohol and everything else above him. And I tell you, there's a part in that song that's like, you know, God's goodness was running after me the whole time. It was
yeah,
like he was always there. He was always protecting me. He protected me from myself. There are many things that I did that I could have gotten killed. I mean, it was stupid, stupid.
yeah,
And I look back and I think that was so stupid, you know.
yeah,
But he was been faithful. He's been such a wonderful friend. There's a part in that song that says, "I've loved you as a father, and I've loved you as a friend. Your goodness is running after me." So I love that.
yeah.
You know,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
So, what would you say to someone who may feel like they're beyond help, at this point?
No, you're not. Nobody is beyond help. I couldn't put I literally could not put more than 2 weeks together. I would
Yeah.
try to stop for 2 weeks, and it was lovely because that mental obsession was going on too. It's been 1 day and I haven't had a drink. It's been 2 days and I haven't had a drink. Well, then by the time I get to 14 days, I'm like, every minute I've thought about it. And then I'm like, I must not be an alcoholic. I can go
Yeah.
2 weeks without a drink. Well, the funny thing was, went to one of the first meetings that I went to. A guy picked up his 30-year, right? His 30-year Jeep, and I said, "You got 30 years?" He said, "So you're new?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, let me tell you. If you came in here and you were asking yourself if you were an alcoholic, you just answered your question right there. Because if you'd never
Yeah.
smoked cigarettes and if you were never addicted to cigarettes, you wouldn't be sitting here going like, how am I going to make it 5 years from now without a cigarette? You know, he said that's what
Yeah.
you were just basically doing is saying, if you are not addicted to alcohol, you would just say, oh, okay. But the thing is with I if you work the steps, I think I do think though you have to want it. I think you got to want it. I really do. Cuz I know when I first came in, Joe, I thought of all of the things that might make me drink. And I came in and I found out you're not struck drunk. You have
Right.
a choice. And you know, so like my dad passed away and that was really painful. And then my brother passed away, and that was really painful. Painful things happen. People betray you and do all kinds of things. So, painful things happen. But if you are going to these meetings and you are working these steps to the best of your ability, and you're working with a sponsor, and I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, you know, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's just if you want it, it's yours for the taking. But you have to be happy about it too, you know.
Be happy, Dan.
Be happy, I said so, and I'm a control freak.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to share that maybe we didn't cover?
No, I really can't think of anything. No, I can't think of anything. Um,
Well, I think your story is amazing, Sonia, and you just have such a beautiful way of sharing it. And I really, I'm so glad that you took the time to talk to me. But I can't let you go without doing our rapid fire questions.
okay,
So, if you are ready, my friend.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. So, what is your favorite recovery slogan?
My favorite thing that I've heard is I'm not a bad person that needs to get good. I was a sick person that needed to get well.
Mm. What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Live and let live. I think that was my husband's least one too. That was his least favorite. Huh. Fun at our
What?
house.
Yep, we know what it's like there. What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
I don't know, Joe. That's hard. I like to um I like to try to encourage people to give it a shot.
Yeah.
I like to tell them just what God did for me. And I also love to have women come over and have book studies over here, and we learn and we fellowship, and I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah.
So, and that's so important.
Yeah. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Come in a whole lot sooner.
I
I
think we
mean,
might know the
really,
answer to we might know the answer to this next one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
well, I love that one by CC Wine, and I love gosh, but there's so many good songs. I don't know. I love Motown, just like my husband. Now we do love that. And when we work around the
Yeah.
house, we like to listen to Motown. And my sweet husband, God love that man's heart. He can fix anything or do anything. He's wonderful. But my girl,
All right. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
I would say I have sponsored people in the past that have relapsed. And I tried and I tried and I tried to get them to want this, and just not take it personal, because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm. What step do you love the most?
Step 10,
What step do you love the least?
the making amends. It's all of them are good. All of them are good. That was just, yeah,
It's hard.
that was just hard. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, Lord, Joe. I had somebody in the program ask me, he said, "Do you really say that? Do you really say that? I want you to just call me up sometime and say that on my recorder." I'm like, "Are you kidding?" It's the F bomb, and I am good at it.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You tried. You tried. Thank you for trying. Thank you for sharing thank you for telling people that I can heal you. I can heal them. And just always, because I do, I try to, I try to tell them that, and I
Yeah.
think that would be great to hear that. Welcome home, girlfriend. You tried. You may not have always succeeded, but you tried. Anyway,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sonia. And just to remind the listening folks, a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Amazon's Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." And we'd also appreciate if you like, subscribe, and share. Sonia, thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. I really appreciate it.
thank you, Joe.
It's just a laid back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.